kutimiza ahadi yake.
From fathers to sons, we have a tale of two families that keep Kenya on the edge.
Tukienda kotini tunaambiwa kila Friday tunaambiwa kujeni next Friday mpaka imekuwa mwaka 4 saa hii.
Mutunga's closing arguments, tough questions for the CJ as he leaves office this week. And just what is he up to? Musalia Mudavadi is live on Checkpoint tonight. The hashtag on social media is Checkpoint. Let's get the show started. Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Let's begin here in Nairobi, where the opposition coalition CORD has in the last few hours suspended its street protests that were planned for tomorrow. The coalition says the move is meant to give room for dialogue with Jubilee over the future of the IEBC. The party, however, says it will resume the demos if there is no progress by Thursday. But as Chris Thairu now reports, major sticking points remain on both sides of the stalemate.
After the march publicized the plan for demonstrations against the electoral body IEBC that was to be staged on Monday and Thursday, the opposition coalition CORD had an announcement to make.
Kesho siku ya Jumatatu hakutakuwa na maandamano katika nchi nzima hadi Alhamisi tutakapofika pale na kuona kwamba tumeweza kufanikiwa kuanzisha mazungumzo ambao tulikuwa tunategemea yaanze.
We have shown goodwill, good faith, and this is not the first time that we are suspending these demonstrations to give room for constructive dialogue. And therefore, we hope that with this space that we've given, by at least mid this week, the process should begin.
But CORD says it is giving the government only 2 days to respond to their raft of demands.
As we speak, we do not have any document or any position paper on what Jubilee intends to handle, how it intends to handle this dialogue. But we have a position.
The announcement came on the back of sharp rhetoric from both sides. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who spoke in Kitui County, reiterated that he was not ready to circumvent the constitution to suit a few leaders, insisting that the law must be followed to the letter.
Badala ya kuzungukana hapa, fanyeni haraka bwana, tukuje tubadilishe hiyo yote mnataka, tuwe na IEBC mpya kama hiyo ndio mnataka. Mimi sina haja ni nani atakuwa chairman, mimi sina haja ni nani atakuwa commissioner, kwa sababu mwishowe IEBC sio yenye kura ni ya wananchi wa Kenya.
We are ready, we are willing to talk and engage in the dialogue about the IEBC.
Jubilee legislators say that they are ready for any talks with the opposition and that come Tuesday, they will be tabling in Parliament the list of members to represent them in the Joint Select Committee for approval.
We know you have already sensed defeat, na sasa ndio mnataka kuleta instability. Ndio muanze kuwa na caretaker government. We will not allow you.
Wabunge hawa watatue swala la IEBC through an institution that is empowered by our new constitution. Anasema twende turudi wapi? Serena. My heart skipped a bit. Sababu Serena has bad memories for this country.
But if CORD feels we want to have 10, 5, then be it. As long as we start talking, as long as we go to people to ask their views. I think the most important thing is, can we start talking and can we reduce the tension? That's the most important thing.
CORD has maintained that the dialogue process must be conducted outside Parliament. They also want the number of negotiators reduced to a maximum of 7 on each side, with a joint secretariat of 4 members drawn from both sides of the divide.
Mimi sipingi serikali ya Jubilee. Mimi nisema kama wameshaingia wafanye kazi yao. Wapewe nafasi wafanye kazi ya upinzani, ni kuona serikali inatimiza ahadi yake.
The demonstrations have been ongoing for the last 6 weeks, leaving at least 6 people dead and more than 30 wounded, most of them from bullet wounds. Chris Dairo, KTN News.
Now, amid the arguments, Chief Justice Dr. Willie Mutunga says police failed the country in their handling of recent protests. Mutunga says police have a duty to protect the right to picket by ensuring demonstrations are not infiltrated by criminals. He spoke in a town hall meeting in Nairobi's Korogosho slums.
There's an active push and pull, if you like, in this country today. The issues about picketing, demonstrations within the law or whatever it is. What's the position? Are demonstrations allowed in this country?
As far as I'm concerned, there will never be a demonstration if the police don't guarantee peace. They are the ones who should make sure those who are carrying stones, those who are destroying property, the thugs who are pickpocketing people. That's what police are employed to do. You arrest them and you charge them. Okay? So what I've been telling the IG, if people want to demonstrate, call them, talk to them, agree on where they are going, and make sure that they are protected. Okay? Because the people who might have stones are probably not part of the demonstration. All right?
Now, as anxiety grows in the country over the IEBC standoff, analysts fear it could be an extension of the political rivalry between Kenya's 2 leading political families. The standoff once again pits President Uhuru Kenyatta, the son of Kenya's first president, against Raila Odinga, whose father was Kenya's founding vice president. Is the current standoff a genuine political problem or a continuation of the long-running political feud between the 2 families? Murimi Mwangi takes a closer look.
For over a month now, the country's 2 top political protagonists, opposition leader Raila Odinga and his arch-rival President Uhuru Kenyatta, have been locked in what could easily pass as a bitter standoff over the country's electoral agency. But the Uhuru-Raila war of words over the IEBC is arguably just the latest phase of a long-running political rivalry between the 2 most famous political families in Kenya, the Kenyattas and the Odingas, a duel which was set in motion by none other than the country's 2 founding fathers, the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and his first vice president, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Just like their fathers who made their first encounter in Kanu during the country's post-independence period, Raila and Uhuru made their first meeting in Kanu in 2002 when retired President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi chose to appoint the younger Uhuru over the more politically experienced Raila Odinga.
Na huyu ni huyu Mzee Uhuru.
Seething in rage, Raila bolted out with a huge following of other disgruntled Kanu diehards. This just as his father Jaramogi did in 1966 when Mzee Kenyatta unceremoniously demoted him from Kanu and sacked him as vice president, following ideological differences on how to run the country.
The land was actually the big factor in disagreement between Jaramogi and Mzee.
Years later, Uhuru and Raila would meet yet again in ODM during the no campaigns against the 2005 draft constitution. But here there was no doubt that Raila was the unrivaled king, and so Uhuru led his Jogoo party into PNU, where he endorsed Mwai Kibaki for president.
Katika historia yetu.
But as fate would have it, Raila and Uhuru ended up in a common house called the Grand Coalition Government, where Uhuru would serve as Deputy Prime Minister, and Raila Odinga who took up the Prime Minister's position. The ICC cases brought out the rivalries yet again as Uhuru Kenyatta accused Raila of working with foreigners to stop him from ascending to the presidency.
I am talking about a specific man by the name of Raila Amolo Odinga who does not want peace for this nation.
Upinzani ni kuona serikali inatimiza ahadi yake.
And while 2017 is proving to be a more fierce face-off between Uhuru and Raila in the race to State House, all eyes are now trailed on the two as the country awaits in bated breath a resolution of the current IEBC stalemate. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, now, as we mentioned earlier, the Chief Justice held his last public function this afternoon amid a sharp focus on his legacy. The town hall meeting that was aired exclusively on KTN News saw residents pose tough questions to the outgoing judiciary boss. The CJ insists that the judiciary is still dogged by a vicious cartel.
Tumesafanusi yangu, by the way. Hoteli ameturudisha nyuma. Tukienda kotini tunaambiwa kila Friday tunaambiwa kujeni next Friday mpaka imekuwa mwaka 4 saa hii. 4 years tunazunguka tu Jogoo Road ni court 5. So sisi yangu amekosa life. Si kiwete, si kiziwi, yani si maiti, yani ni mtu tu analala tu. Kwa hiyo
katika judiciary tuna ofisi ambayo inaitwa Office of the Judiciary Ops Person. Tumefungua ili watu waweze kulalamikia katika hiyo ofisi. Hiyo case hatujapata. Wajua wakati mwingine mambo utatiliwa baada ya mtu kujua kuna jambo fulani. Ikiwa kuna kesi yako imechelewa sana au kuna kesi ambayo haijafanywa au kama hiyo kesi ya huyo dada ambayo iko Makandara na imekaa miaka mingi, siku hizi kuna ofisi ambayo unaweza kuenda pale ukalalamikia na tumejaribu sana kusaidia.
Vijana watatu 15 years of age Kiamaiko walishikwa na polisi na walitolewa kwa nyumba. Vile walikataa kutoa hongo, walienda wakachajiwa na felony. Saa hizi mahakama inataka wapatiane cash bail ya 50,000 shillings na wote ni vijana underage minors. So this is a concern, it's a big concern that the judiciary is failing us because it's contributing towards police brutality and police impunity mashinani.
Let me answer that because I know Mumbi has the Kacheke virus also. She knows, Mumbi is a clever woman. She knows that if you go to a magistrate who says 50,000, okay, that can be reviewed by a judge, you know. So when you say the judiciary is failing you and you haven't exhausted the processes, surely you are not being, you're not being fair, okay?
All right, now that town hall meeting was part of our continuing coverage of the Mutunga legacy. And throughout the week, we will be giving you a comprehensive analysis of the CJ's time in office through the eyes of those who loved him and those who loathed him. All that right here on KTN News, the country's only 24-hour news channel where you get the whole story. But for now, I'd like us to take a look at some of the major cases that have defined Mutunga's years at the helm of the Supreme Court here in Kenya. And we've just picked a few of them. There's quite a number, of course, cases that they've handled since he took office. And let's begin with the first one, which came before the 2013 election. And many of you will remember remember this, especially those who are in the push for gender equality in the country. So in 2012, the Supreme Court ruled on the 1/3 gender rule. Now, if you remember, they all came up with this unanimous decision, even though there was dissent, that said that the gender rule would not be applied during the March 4th, 2013 general election, and instead gave direction that the implementation of this rule would be done progressively up until 2015. This was phenomenal. Coming just before the 2013 general election, many of the women representatives in the country, women leaders, came out to disagree with the decision, even though they said they would abide by it, because of course this was something that was said by the Supreme Court. We'll have some of those graphics for you in just a short while. Now, interesting to note, the Chief Justice, William Mutunga himself, dissented this ruling. He called it, and I quote, he said, "It flew in the face of the struggle by women in Kenya." And of course, we all know then what happened. There we go. We have our graphics for you now. So let's move to the next court, the next case at the court. And this is the big one. This is exactly why the Supreme Court, one of their biggest roles, which is to decide on presidential election petitions, which they did in 2013. I remember there were 3 sets of respondents. It was Dennis Itumbi, Moses Kuria on one end. We also had AFRICOG on the other, and we had Raila Odinga on one end. And we know how that ruling went, and it was that Deputy President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy were duly elected. I want us to move very quickly to the next one. They, of course, started to hear quite a bit of a number of election petitions at this time. This one was a big one, and we'll be telling you why. The ramifications of this are still being felt today. It was this case pitting Evans Kidero against Ferdinand Waititu. Now, this is what the Supreme Court ruled. They said the Court of Appeal had erred when it nullified Kidero's petition, and that the Court of Appeal should never have entertained Waititu's plea because it came after the stipulated time of 30 days. Why is this significant? Because even though they upheld the election of Evans Kidero, those damning allegations of bribery by Kidero's agents to Justice Philip Tunoi, who sat on the bench and heard this case in terms of getting that into Evans Kidero. And of course, we all know what that happened. It cast aspersions not just on him, but on all the other Supreme Court justices. There is a tribunal currently ongoing to take a look at the merits of those allegations against a member of the Supreme Court. Also, there was a tussle between the Ministry of Lands and the National Lands Commission. Remember, at the time, Charity Ngilu was at the helm, and we know the Supreme Court heard this case and ruled that the National Land Commission has no mandate to issue title deeds, and that this is a strict preserve of the Ministry of Lands. Then we all remember the big one again between the Teacher Service Commission and the National Union of Teachers. Remember, the TSC appealed the ruling of a lower court and wanted the Supreme Court to stop the adoption of the 50 to 60% pay rise that had been awarded. This set the stage for a big battle in the education sector. The government, of course, did not abide by that ruling. They said they do not have the money to do that. One of the longest teacher strikes in the country's history. Then there was this one on the digital migration in the country. This was also in 2014. Now, what were the merits before the court? What were the issues before the Supreme Court? One was whether the authority was a constitutionally envisaged body, whether that authority lawfully and constitutionally allowed a broadcast signal distribution to PANG, and whether the National Signal Networks, that was a consortium of the Big Three, Nation Media Group, the Standard Group, and the Royal Media Services, had legitimate expectation to be entitled a broadcast license. And the Supreme Court ruled in the favor of the government, saying that Communications Authority was legally mandated to issue licenses on the authority. Now, those are some of the big cases. Of course, there is many more, including the case of upholding the election of Peter Munya as governor, also of Hassan Joho, quite a number, but those are the big 5, big 6 that we're focusing on today. And of course, we will continue with our coverage like we said, and if you missed that Korogosho Town Hall meeting, you can catch it again right here on KTN News immediately after Checkpoint. That's around 10:30. So please do stay with us for our continued coverage on Mutunga's exit from the Supreme Court and what happens thereafter, who takes over, and the legacy he leaves behind at the Supreme Court. I want to take you to the U.S. now here on Checkpoint, where the death toll in the Florida nightclub shooting has now surpassed 50. Police say the gunman, whose act has been described a terrorism incident, also injured 53 people. The attack on the gay nightclub was billed as the worst terror attack in U.S. history since 9/11. The gunman has been named as Omar Martin. The two leading U.S. presidential candidates posted brief messages of sympathy on Twitter. Both Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee, and Hillary Clinton, his likely Democratic rival, have warned the other candidate would make Americans more vulnerable to politically motivated attacks if elected. Clinton has also promised she would make gun control laws more stringent. Trump, on the other hand, has dismissed this as an unnecessary infringement on gun owners' rights, saying everyone would be safer if more people had guns. Police say the gunman has since been killed. All right, let's come back to the country now and take you to Kakamega, where Senator Boni Halwale found himself in trouble when he took politics to a funeral in Burimbuli village. Halwale had just launched a scathing attack on Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya when a woman grabbed the microphone, cut short his speech, and told the legislator to take his war to another forum. The woman even moved closer to Halwale and told him to hold his tongue, reminding him that the function was a funeral and not a political rally. Here is part of that uncomfortable moment for the outspoken senator.
Talking about Honorable Paranya, and yet marrying a woman is a domestic affair. How did you want to marry the one who has done it? Yes, Mr. Ngoma, I'm refusing that fact. Do your work. Let the governor do his work. Let us be together. Let's go.
No, she's right.
All right, let's move away from that drama in Kakamega County. Now, what happens when people are diagnosed with HIV? An innovative project still in Kakamega County is offering HIV-positive victims new opportunities and a future they thought was lost to them. KTN's Mashirima Kapombe visited these families and now reports.
A sweet harvest for a man who once thought his life had taken a bitter turn. Chickens clucking to the delight of the children who know this as the reason they remain in school. A mother tends to the source of her independence. These are families who once thought the end had come when the caregivers were diagnosed with HIV.
Sikuwa na nyumba. Hata nguo nilikuwa siwezi kuafford kununulia watoto nguo vile unaona hivi. Ilikuwa zero.
This beekeeping project not only keeps them busy, it also puts food on their table and gives them shelter.
They get some income to start very small businesses, the small micro enterprises in the villages. And by doing so, you find that these households are capable of picking up from below $1 to about $3 a day.
Nasimiyu is a single mother of 3 and her warmth and chatty nature draws me in. She was diagnosed with HIV in 2008. Both her parents are dead, and in this region, women living alone, much less owning land, are shunned.
Anafungia hata skati kwa barabara akienda. Lakini mimi hata naonanga hiyo time sina. Acha ni relax hapa na watoto.
One of her children is HIV positive, something she wishes she could have prevented. But she's not looking back. Like those who depend on the beekeeping project, she has been able to find independence because of her farm.
Alice Nasimiyu started with 3 chicken. Now 4 years down the line, she has a cow, which I hope will drink the water that I've just given it. And in a few months, it will also give birth and give her milk that will be able to sustain her family.
It's not just the anticipation of milk that makes Nasimiyu glow.
Nauza mayai ama kama nimeona kuki imefika kiasi fulani naweza toa kama mwera moja na nauza na nunulia mmoja kitabu.
So it seems that chicken not only produce eggs. In Kakamega County, they can produce books as well. Mashirima Kapombe, KTN News in the county of Kakamega.
All right, so it's time to go back in time, or rather to keep reminding you of some of these important events in the country's history. And like we say every day, unless we forget, or rather every Sunday, is that the politicians are readying themselves for 2017. The talks before the talks before the talks. Are you ready? So let's do our usual countdown right here on Checkpoint. Lest we forget, we have exactly 421 days to the next general election. What do we want to remind you about, as we do here every Sunday, is that the voter registration process is continuous in the country, and that this process of registering voters is done at the constituency level. And that is important for you to remember. This is done at the constituency level, and it's happening every day of the week, Monday to Friday, at the constituency level around the 290 constituencies we have in the country. Now, this whole process will close officially in May 2017, that is on the 10th of May. Now, right here on Checkpoint, we're always reminding you, lest we forget, that it is your civic duty and you are the ultimate decider in all of the political noise that goes on in this country. Now, we're asking you to go out there across the 290 constituencies in this great land, take a picture, tell us what that process was like in the process of trying to get yourself registered. Remember, you can also change, your voter registration center, your voter polling center in 2017. That number, 0706-727272. Please do send us your feedback. Send us some pictures as well. And I'll be getting to some of your feedback. But this is some new information that is coming out of the IEBC now. Remember, like we're saying, you can also transfer your vote. 600,000 are the number of requests they have received from you Kenyans wanting to transfer your votes. And out of that, Nairobi and Kajiado together hold the biggest number of those wanting to change their voter centers. That's about 116,000. Nyanza is about 98,000. That's Nyanza Central. And also to remind you that the voter inspection, the voter register will be open for inspection in August 2016. This is according to the IEBC. So, in fact, it is basically on this issue that we've gotten quite a bit of feedback from you on. So let's take a look at some of your feedback that you've been sending. Remember that WhatsApp number again, 0706-727272. We have this one here from Kennedy Oyola, who's in Homa Bay, saying that he changed his polling station from Nairobi to Homa Bay during that mass voter registration exercise that was done in February. And he says up to now he's yet to receive any feedback. We also got some feedback tonight from Nicholas Omia, who's in Sabatia constituency. He says, are you serious? Because what I know is that voter registration was done last year. That's why we're here to remind you, lest you forget, it is a continuous process that's happening at the constituency level right up until May next year. Here's another one from Genevieve Adhiambo, who, by the way, is an unregistered voter. And this is what she says. So many youth in the country, specifically Siaya County, not well informed about the voter registration centers. So many are not registered because they do not know. So in Siaya, if we take a look at the constituencies, that's Alego, Bondo, Gem, Rarieda, Ugenya, and Ugunja. Please go out and look for your constituency office. Let us know what that process is like. Genevieve, hopefully we'll have you registered by next Sunday or the Sunday thereafter. And it's also a reminder to you to keep your feedback coming on this issue as we remind you of your civic duty. Like we always say here on Checkpoint, the politicians are readying themselves. Are you? Okay, so I want to switch gears now, and the number of the week, an interesting conversation. Now, let me just give you a little bit of background and context to this. Now, there's the Global Peace Index that is ranks about 100, actually more than 160 countries around the world. It's done by a think tank known as the Institute for Economics and Peace. It's now in its 10th year, and they've released their Global Peace Index 2016. Now, they're saying that the world has become more dangerous in 2016, and from the previous board, you could see that only 10 countries in the world are said to be completely free from conflict. Now, just 2 are African countries. And let's take this number a little bit cautiously, because one of them that is in the top 10 is Botswana. The other is Mauritius, an island off the Indian Ocean coast. We like to lump it together as Africa. So only 2 countries are said to be the most peaceful. Now, let me just round off the top 10 for you real quick. Botswana, Chile, Costa Rica, Japan, Mauritius, Panama, Qatar, Switzerland, Uruguay, and Vietnam. Now, I know you want to know what Kenya's ranking is. We're not doing too well in this ranking. 131 out of 163. Now, regionally, are we doing well? Excuse me. No, we're not. In fact, Tanzania is doing better than us. They're ranked 58 out of 163. Even Uganda is doing better than us, 101 out of 63. Now, this Global Peace Index, you may ask, why is this important and does it even matter? Well, it's an interesting thing pointing at where government funding goes to. Now, in countries that are less peaceful than others, it means they're spending more money on creating and containing conflict. What does this mean? It means then that there is less money for development issues, such as poverty, health, and education. If we're a country that's spending a little bit more on creating and containing conflict, and by the way, they take a look at a number of issues, including domestic and international conflict. And one of the big things that they're looking at is, or the big threats to peace in the world, is terrorism and political instability. So you can imagine a number of countries in Africa like Burundi, and also, abroad like Syria. In fact, the Middle East and Africa are said to be contributing heavily to the deterioration of peace in the country. Now, this is so important that the UN is now recognizing peace as an important atmosphere for development, which is why it is one of those Sustainable Development Goals, number 16, that takes a look at peace, justice, and strong institutions. And of course, this Global Peace Index has been endorsed by a number of world leaders, Kofi Annan, the Dalai Lama, among several others. So Kenya, 131 out of 163. Also important to note, by the way, is that there's a peace inequality gap. Apparently, those that are less violent are, continuing to improve, while those that are less peaceful are continuing to deteriorate. So there's this huge gap in the world, and Kenya is falling not very well there. In fact, Somalia is 159 out of 163. So you can see Kenya not doing too well. That is your number for the week. So go out and make peace. We're taking a short break right now. We'll be back with the day's sports. Kisumu-based driver and national rally defending champion Jasprit Chatha won a thrilling KCB safari rally with a feisty drive at a dusty Lake Elementaita terrain. An intense battle followed with less than 2 minutes, covering Rajbir Rai, Tapio Lakanen and Ian Duncan, who took the 2nd, 3rd and 4th positions respectively.
Jasprit Chatha and his navigator Gugu Panesa displayed delightment in today's victory. The pair extended the overnight lead on Saturday at the last stages in Elementaita. The Kisumu-based driver finally won the Nakuru rally with a 2 minutes 23 seconds advantage. The defending national rally champion survived a weekend with tens of casualties.
There's no secret, it's just the hard work, the commitment from the team, the family, the support to get these achievements.
Well, we're very, very happy to have won the safari the 2nd time. Jazzy drove extremely well this weekend. We had a good pace, we had a good rhythm, we had a clean run. We took it very cleanly this time.
Rajbir Rai finished 10 seconds later to bag the 2nd spot, while Finland's ace Tapio Lakanen overtook Ian Duncan by 1 minute to take the 3rd position. It was a tough weekend that saw Tapio Lakanen and his navigator Pasi Toma end day 2 with 2 punctures.
I was hoping to continue to be consistent and hopefully win a rally.
It's one of the most difficult one what we have done so far. I mean, we had quite a few issues with the car and also a few punctures. So it was a hard event, but having said that, then it's very relieving to get to the finish and get the podium.
2 punctures, no brakes, and no centre diff, but at least we finished, which is the main thing.
Flash Tundo finished 5th during the outing of Baldev Chaga, who retired on Saturday after his car hit a stone, spoiling the radiator, says he'll be aiming to shine in the next outing. The National Rally Championships will now move to Mombasa on the 23rd of this month. Lynn Washira, KTN News.
And finally, in the last few hours, the opposition has called off what they say would have been countrywide protests in their ongoing push to have commissioners at the IEBC kicked out. This came amid indications that the religious leaders may be making progress in bringing the two sides to the negotiating table. This, of course, is a great relief to many business people who are already bracing themselves for yet another disruptive week. President Uhuru Kenyatta had earlier in the day dismissed court's demands, insisting that Parliament is the only forum where such discussions should take place. Those sentiments have been echoed by Jubilee legislators who say they are ready to present their list of 11 members to sit in the yet-to-be-constituted Joint Parliamentary Select Committee. Indeed, court also says the truth is only up to Thursday if their counterparts will not have yielded to their demands. That would suggest that a real deal is still some way away. But assuming they were to agree and the talks were to begin right away, would that be the lasting solution many Kenyans have been hoping for? Is this just about two political coalitions sitting in a boardroom and solving all of the country's problems? Granted, Jubilee and CORD together control the whole of Parliament. But should that be enough justification for the two of them to decide such important questions about the country all by themselves? What about bodies such as the Law Society of Kenya that have indicated they may have something to say about IEBC? What of workers' organizations such as KOTU and the rest? How about organized civil society? If indeed there is broad consensus that some kind of talks should happen on the future of the IEBC, then shouldn't there be more voices involved? CORD argues that the talks should be held outside Parliament's control, but even they do not give room for anyone other than politicians to make the important decisions. In the end, it may be yet another political deal that will not be truly in the interest of the country. The resulting document may just be a problem postponed, one that will yet come to haunt the country when political circumstances change in the future. And that is my take tonight. Thanks for watching the show today, and always we look forward to your feedback. Maresha Owiti was our sign language interpreter. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole. Please do stay right here on KTN News, because in case you missed that town hall meeting that Chief Justice Willie Mutunga had as his last public outing, we had that exclusively at 2 p.m. We're airing it again right after this. And remember to stay with KTN News for our ongoing, comprehensive and very authoritative coverage on the outgoing of the CJ and indeed who will succeed him at the Supreme Court. So stay tuned. James Smart will be moderating that session with the Chief Justice. Happened earlier in Korogosha slums right here on KTN News, where you get the whole story. Have a good night and a great week ahead, Kenya. Good night.